Are you there?
I
Hello,
I'm here.
Brian. It's time
You're
for our chat.
yes, our chat. And you as we chatted before the chat, we talked about the topic of accepting no as an answer, and that's a good one, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because just over the last 5 days or so, the answer no was sort of given to me a couple times. And as much as I tried to pretend to meditate and to be like, is this no real or am I reading into this no? The sort of physical sign of the no was there. So, to give you context, we decided we would take a road trip to Palenque, which is one of the majestic pyramids here in Mexico. And it's a quite a road trip. It's about 3, 4 hours from where we are. So we decided to break it up and kind of do it over 4 days and spend 2 nights
Oh,
in Palenque. There's, beautiful blue waters, there's waterfalls. So we were like, we'll just do this slowly and enjoy it without being rushed.
uh-huh.
So we set off, like 2 days before we set off, we sent the motorbike because we were traveling by motorbike to the workshop to just check everything and change the oil, sort of a safety check. And it came back not starting. So
Oh,
the next day, we were supposed to leave on Saturday. The motorbike was in the shop all morning on Saturday. And we were like, all right, if we're supposed to leave today, we'll have the motorbike. Finally, we got the motorbike at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon and it was starting. So we're like, let's go. So our first stop was Ocosingo, which is about 2 hours from San Cristobal. And when we got to Ocosingo, the bike wouldn't start.
oh dear.
And we were staying with my dude's family. And so it was kind of relaxed and sort of like, all right, the bike's not starting. And this was Saturday. We're like, don't know if there's any place to take it on a Sunday, but we're fine technically. And we can extend sort of Palenque by a day. Thankfully, there was a workshop open. So we took the bike there and they're like, oh, massive things are wrong with it. Like, literally need to open up the engine and look at the engine. So we were like, okay, well, let's see what we can do about that. And at that point, we're like, probably not going to Palenque. We're going back to San Chris if we can get the bike back to San Chris. So we decided to travel on Monday to come back to San Chris, thinking if we break down, at least there's traffic on the road and they can pick us up and continue back to San Chris. But it was, interesting because I like to think that I'm in tune and I do sort of check before I go. Like I do prayers and make sure that the road is open and the angels are traveling with us. So when I checked in, I was like, all right, am I going to Palenque? I got a yes. And I was like, all right, we're going. Let's go. When we got to Ocosingo, I did the same thing. I was like, not going to Palenque and checked in, and the answer was yes. And I was like, all right, if the bike's ready to go, the bike's ready to go. And so the bike was the no. And it was just interesting for me to be able to notice that when I got the answer no, no Palenque, we're going back to San Chris, I was like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the other option of still taking a vacation. It's a staycation, but we're not going where we thought we were going.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think the all well, not all maybe traditions, but certainly the Tao and Buddhism, I think, talks about, when you're brittle, you break, and
Mm-hmm.
when you're pliable, you're able to move back and forth. And so, and what I like is the fact that you and your dude are on the same wavelength. That he was thinking the same way. You didn't argue about it. You
Not at
didn't.
all.
Yeah,
Not
you
at
didn't say,
all.
"Well, I really want to go. Why don't we rent a
Yeah,
car?"
well, let's leave the motorbike here and let's take other transportation. It was just,
Right.
nope, change of plan. We're okay with the no and the yes, which is staycation and at home.
Yeah. Did anything really fun happen with the staycation?
I no longer have emails.
No, but between you and the dude.
I think, being able to recognize the no with Palenque what I was able to see was that we both needed some time. So that's why we said, let's go to Palenque, because we're both into that kind of thing. And we thought that would be a nice sort of reconnection, kind of just time for the two of us. But what actually ended up happening is coming back to San Chris was much better quality of time.
Mm.
We were like hanging out, just the two of us. There's been things that we've had to deal with, but we haven't really had the distraction of visiting places or exploring places. It's been, you guys have to hang out. You have to kind of connect. So that's been sort of a wonderful um, gift of the no to Palenque and the yes to a staycation.
You know, one of the things, Haley, I feel is that when we have these experiences that are not what we planned, they're what we remember. You know, when you and your guy are, you know, let's just pretend having beers in, you know, 5 years, and you both can laugh with and talk about, because the trip didn't end up the way you planned.
Mm-mm.
And if it had, if everything had gone smoothly, you would have remembered that you had been there, but you didn't have any life lessons necessarily that came up for you that changed you. I had a different no that happened this week. A few weeks ago, I got an inquiry from a person who was doing diversity and inclusion work with the Fannie Mae and, you know, the government group. And so they asked if I was available to do a Zoom, you know, a meeting or presentation in June, which is, you know, gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender awareness month. And so I said yes. And I said, but these are the things that I hope the group is doing in order to make sure that this is an effective presentation. Try to make sure that the whole human resource department is there, and make sure that the leadership of the organization is there, and try to make it mandatory. And if you can't, you know, send out a letter saying we'll be there and we hope to see you. You know, I gave them all of, you know, 50 years of my experience.
Right.
And didn't hear. And I also asked, is there any fee with this? And I didn't state, you know, I told them what I made when I was, you know, on the ground with the, you know, the National Security Agency, but didn't hear. And so I wrote, I said, now, do you still want me to hold the date? And, oh, I'm glad you got in touch with us. We've chosen someone else. So first of all, I'm not used to not being the one chosen. You know, I've had this wonderful life of, you know, I was the one they wanted, and we were going to work it out. And I wasn't difficult, but I just, you know, it's like Edith Ann, I'm not bossy. My ideas are just better, right? So I, you know, I gave them benefit of my experience, but I think it was too much for them. And I think I'm having to deal with age, you know, that they are more interested in somebody who's younger. There was the theme, they were in Washington, D.C., and I think the D.C. gay group picked up the theme of, it was something like radical, like radical change. And I wrote in my response that, you know, coming out is radical. So we need to allow for, you know, a discussion of that too, that it's still radical to put a face on the issue. You know, I have, there's a person who I'd like to have on our podcast later in the year, who works for the government, who is transitioning, and the term that the American Psychiatric Association uses is gender dysphoria. And I've never thought about the word dysphoria, right? But she was very clear with me, you know, that dysphoria is a real thing, and it's a feeling that has to be acknowledged. It's not just gender, it's gender dysphoria. What is dysphoria? So I wrote her back and she wrote me back and she said, well, Brian, thank you for your letter, but my generation uses this terminology. And I want to introduce the subject in the corporate world.
Isn't it interesting that for DEI, which is all about inclusion, you were excluded?
Well, I told that the old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be. or he ain't what he used to be. That, I was a thoroughbred racehorse and I'm not really being pulled out of pasture right now. And so accepting the no of it, so the lesson learned for me in getting the no, right, especially on the speaking thing, was okay, this is a new place in your life. You're not used to this. And it makes perfect sense that you're going to get a no. And not all the time, probably, but you're going to get a no. And what does that mean to you in terms of your ego, or in terms of your sense of where you're going from here? Does that make sense to you? That
It totally does. And I would ask you, with every no, there is a yes. So where
yeah.
is your yes in this?
Well, the yes, that's a really good question. The yes for me would be, yes, this makes sense. Yes, right. Instead of scratching my head and complaining to Ray, it just makes sense to me that
The acceptance.
I'm 76. I think I'm 26. I do. I look in the mirror and I, who in the hell are you? Because I'm, in this body, the soul is, 26, 36, whatever. But so there are changes in life that you weren't really planning on, well, I expected it, but I didn't expect it yet. No. So the yes for me was acceptance, gracious acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of firing off a nasty email saying, how in the hell, and who have you invited?
I think it's, when I listen to your story, you and I see age a little bit differently, but I don't see that it's your age that is the difference here. I think it's just the time is different. I think that where we are with society right now and what we're seeing especially in the US, is a lot of double standards. And I think what you got to experience was a very clear, no, Brian, this isn't the time for your wisdom.
Yeah.
Nobody can hear your wisdom right now, because your wisdom, and I say this from a place of experience and from listening to you speak, your wisdom is about inclusion. It is about equality. And at the moment, when I look at the US and I look at everything that's happening across all aspects, there is no equality, there is no inclusion. So, when I hear your no, I'm like, that makes sense, because there's nobody to listen to you in that specific forum.
Yeah. Haley, there's just this morning when I was reading about the breaking up the college encampments, the tents, and if I was in school right now in college, at age 20, I'd be in a tent too.
Oh, I mean, I'll be with you.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be as clear as the Vietnam War was for me, because that was clearly, I mean, there are so many issues tied into the, Hamas and Israel and what's happening, in terms of killing all these people. But you and I would have been in a tent, right? Mm-hmm. But I thought our culture doesn't really coexist very well.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't. Why can't we be more inclusive? Even on the politics, it's very clear. Are you a Trumpite? Because if you are, we can't talk. We've gone into different boxes, and I mean, you can get your head shot off in my community if you use the wrong terminology. some young person's going to, take a whack. They don't care who you are or what you've done. They're in charge now. You're not going to use that term. And so there's a lack of graciousness. I feel that doesn't mean you can't find, huh?
It's very interesting to me, and sort of we're leading into the topic that I was sort of wanting to bring up today, which was about sort of these encampments and sort of asking for your wisdom, because I know that that was your life several decades ago. Because we talk a lot about it being 2024 and there being equality in the workspace and DEI being a very sort of big, came out of COVID where DEI was huge. And when we look at where we are now after all of that, we seem to have taken a massive leap backwards because there is no diversity, equality, inclusion in what we're seeing politically, community wise. It's very much you're either on my side or you're out. It's very, very exclusive and very unequal. And so, like, when there's DEI, I question that. When there's this idea of what should we be doing, it's very hard to kind of know our place and to be able to, as you say, if we were both 20 and in university, of course, I know I would be an accountant. I'm pretty sure you would be with me too. But it's very hard, at this point in my life where I do have a bit more information, I do have a bit more wisdom, I do have the patience to kind of step back and look at the bigger picture here. It's still incredibly difficult to try and find what is the right thing to do here and how do you speak?
And if you are in those camps, how do you accept no for the answer?
Nobody is accepting no right now.
Yeah, saying no one, right. And one of the things, Haley, that's happening too is that there are people who are co-opting the Palestinian thing. They're adding all kinds of other issues to it that aren't about Hamas. They're about, war in general, or, the atom bomb, or, there's just, people are adding things that you and I in the tent would say, well, that's not why we came. We really are here to protest in the only way we can think of, because I did sit-ins. In college, I remember, it's in my memoir, I called my father to say I was going to be participating in a sit-in at Marquette. And he said, well, don't waste your dime on me.
You're going to need it to bail.
If you're going to make a phone call in jail, don't bother calling me. But at that time, it was pretty clear what the issues were. And right now, you and I, again, would be in the tent, I think, basically to stop the killing. That's why we're here. And we don't have any power. We don't know what our power is. We're college students. We're trying to graduate and get a job. But right now, this is going on and we can't stand around anymore. It's too hard to just watch these statistics every day when another 1,000 people added to the toll of, and seeing children and women, murdered basically. And what do you do about that when you're 20 years old? So you find out that people have set up a tent and they've put on this checkered scarf to, sort of, and so you and I go buy the scarves and put them on our heads because we're trying to make a difference. And then we get caught up in this swirl of attitudes that we're not. That sounded a little anti-Semitic to me. That's not why I'm here. I'm not anti-Israel. What I'm anti is the war and how it's being handled by Netanyahu. But that doesn't mean I hate Israelis, right? But that's what started to ferment in these groups.
That's what fermented. And Bernie Sanders, I'm a fan of Bernie Sanders most of the time. And I want to focus most of the time. But he actually posted something, I think it was on Thursday or Friday, he posted sort of what anti-Semitism is and what it is not. And he was basically saying exactly what you're saying. calling out a person for the way that they're handling something is different from marginalizing an entire group of people or
Right.
marginalizing a religion. And I think it's very easy for us to be able to sit back and see this. But again, coming back to your no, nobody really wants to listen to that. They want to listen to the yes, it is.
Yes.
Fire
Yes.
up.
Yeah. You have power. We're winning. Right. They're the ones that are going to get a no. We're going to take charge. We're taking over the building. And then you get this mob's, excitement that, oh my God, she broke the window and they're opening the door and we're going in.
Yeah, it's varied. And I think it's so interesting to be able to have the privilege of sort of looking at it from afar and being able to ask myself the question like, okay, how are you feeling about this? And what would you do about this? If that was you, would you still be involved? And I would have to say, yes, I am, because I'm human and I would be caught up in the mob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I also, have to give thanks that there are these people that are inspired to be a part of these movements, because ultimately that's what changes the world.
It is.
And I think we have the wonderful privilege right now of seeing change in action. And I think almost every generation has seen this. And I think it's wonderful to be able to be like, I was, not that I was on campus, but I was present to be able to see people being a part of the change.
Yes. And all of us, even this conversation, Haley, is weaving wisdom and feelings into the general conversation, right? The kids that are in the tents and the faculty that are supporting them and the faculty that aren't supporting them, it's all helping us think through the issue. And it's certainly letting Israel know, that he's not popular in the United States. And if he came here, he'd be booed by the students rather than applauded. And that would be a change maybe for him. But we are changing constantly, and all of our issues are related. It's because we're all one. I mean, everyone can relate to what happened to you on the motorcycle. Anybody could relate to it didn't go as planned, right? And so that's a human experience. And how do you deal with no, right? You had asked earlier, and I want to bring this in because we're talking about change. You had asked before we started whether or not having white privilege influenced our belief that we could step in and make change. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it white privilege to think you can change the world?
Yeah. So, and I would say, okay, if that's true, then what about Gandhi? What about Martin Luther King? What about Cesar Chavez? Right? None of them had white privilege, right? And each one of them changed the world.
And each one of them too, you bring them up, and each one of them did exactly the same thing. They protested.
Yes.
They were on the other side of the police fence.
Yes, but they did it with loving kindness.
Mm-hmm.
None of them said to their troops, get ready because we're going to rush the building.
Yeah.
All change. The difference between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X at the time was that Malcolm X was militant and wanted to use, Black power to get change. And Martin Luther King Jr. said, no, it's nonviolence. And he was really influenced by Bayard Rustin, who was a gay Black man who, they kept back because he was gay, and they didn't want anyone to know that the Black movement had a gay man in it. But it was nonviolent. So all the people who I think have made major differences in the world, except that we have to understand, we have to add that there are people who are really bad who had major influences too. Hitler was not a good person, and he didn't do things with loving kindness or nonviolence.
And that's such an interesting let me give you some context on that.
Okay.
There was a point in time where I was obviously learning to accept and not only accept who I was, but also accept that my line of work would involve some level of psychic reading. And one of the things that used to stop one of the sort of the major blockers for me was I see things, but I don't know what to do about them. So I just would rather not see. And so my teacher at the time walked me through sort of the things that I couldn't understand, and sort of we sort of had a very sort of clear walkthrough of these different situations. And, not to speak solely about Hitler, but to talk about those events in history that changed the world because they were so brutal, and so deadly to humanity. And being able to look at those, it was being able to and be able to see the truth that they all started from loving kindness. It was their version, their interpretation of love that put them in that space. Hitler did what he did. I don't agree with what he did and I will not condone it, but I can understand that he did that because he believed that that was love. He believed that that was protection. The same with Trump. Trump does and says things that are absolutely shocking to me, but I can see that he's saying that from a place of, I believe this is love. This is my version of love. It's the same as an abuser will abuse a child and believe that that's love, that that's tough love. So
Yeah.
I think it's, we get all of these things start from love. It's how love gets discombobulated and manipulated into fearful love. And now it's no longer sort of unconditional love, it's conditional love that
Well,
we go off the rails.
yeah, I think that I can be with you when you talk about love being an element of the things that some people have done that are horrifying, but it wasn't, in my mind, unconditional love. It was
It
very,
wasn't, and that's where I'm saying that's where it differs. It becomes conditional love. You're
very conditional.
loved and you're part of my love bubble only if you're this.
That's right. Yeah, and I don't want to hear anything from you that is different than what I'm telling you is love.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
This is how the German people are going to move forward. I love the German people, so we're going to do this and this and this, and we're
Yeah.
going to invade them, and you know, so I understand that. With the abuser, it's not. It's. I mean, the abuser may think it's love, but it's certainly
It's
not.
certainly, and we can sit on the outside of that for those of us that are open to questioning what is love and what's the difference between conditional love and unconditional love, and having the courage to move through that process. We can sit on the outside and be like, all right, I can see where you went wrong with your definition of love. That isn't love. And I think
You
we
know,
can see that with the protests, that we're seeing. The people in the pro-Palestinian believe that they're so in love with humanity that they have to break into a hole. The people that are against them and on the other side of that, whether it be the police or any other protesters that are going into conflict with them, are believing that they're so in love with what they believe in that this is what's needed.
and Haley, you know what? While you were talking, I was thinking that when the U.S. has its election this year, right, half the country is going to hear no.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been warned by some people that if they don't get a yes, there's going to be violence. Yeah. So thinking through, okay, what's going to happen? How can we even help people accept the no? One of the things that I try to do with my Facebook page, which I'm told is, for old people now, Facebook, like email, I try to not be partisan. I try hard. to not be partisan, because I want the people who I know are Republican and are on the, who are reading stuff I put out. I want them to know that I include them. After the last election, when Trump lost, I wrote that, I'm joyful that my guy won, but I'm aware that there's, half the country is not feeling the same way. And one of the people in my Facebook group wrote me, thank you for saying that, because they needed it acknowledged that though they lost, they're hurting, and they need us to know that, so that in our dance of triumph, we don't, step all over them.
Right.
And so, we really need to think in advance about how we individually can influence with loving kindness. If we want to be agents of change in our culture, you and I individually, we can talk. We have to talk about loving acceptance and the inclusion of all people
Absolutely.
in this movement forward.
And I think part of that for me that's really important is being in the middle, not choosing a side. And I always hear Ram Dass, he was sort of the most influential speaker that I listened to, that kind of the penny dropped. And I know it's the same message that's in the Tao, Buddhism, Hindu, all of the religions, all of the theology speak about don't choose a side, be in the middle, be in the flow. And I think that is, when we're in the middle, we accept the no, we accept the yes, we accept that in every no there is a yes. And let's look for the yes, let's look for the opportunities there. So I think it's incredibly difficult to try and find the balance, the flow where we're not choosing sides. And it sounds impossible to say, well, how do I not choose sides when I have to vote?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you, that doesn't jive with us being in the tent, Haley, because we are taking a side, right? We are choosing to risk everything, including the tuition our parents put up, in order to say, you're wrong, Israel, you should not be doing this. So, we're clearly picking a side. I picked a side on the Vietnam War thing, but I think, and what I get sometimes, and it's confusing with the Tao and the Wu Wei, is that sometimes you get a message that says you have to take action. You have to take action. You can't stand there and say, I'm sorry, I don't want to get involved, right? Because if I do, it's going to upset my inner peace. You can't do that, because we're all related, and we're all, if something bad is happening, you need to do what you can to stop it, right? Including somebody kicking a dog. Stop it.
The idea of being in the flow and not choosing a side is, I think, one of the greater mysteries of our existence. Because there is the inspirational action, and I do believe that there are people whose soul's purpose is to be sitting in a tent, is to be the protester. That's their sole purpose. I also, to try and sit back and be like, all right, where is the balance with that? Where is the not picking sides? And I, just like you say, I pick sides. Every day I open up Instagram and I see what's going on, certain parts of the world. I'm just like, that's not right. And for me to pull back into sort of a place of all right, you've just picked a side, but you believe in a teaching that says, be in the middle, have balance. Don't pick a side, because once you pick a side, you've put conditions on love.
I think we have to, I got a notice on my screen that my power is low. So
Oh,
if I
we'll go as long
disappear,
as we can.
yes, we'll go as long as we can. Uh, I think our response, this discussion is multi-leveled,
Oh,
right? Right. So we talk about uh, all of us, the intersectionality of all of us. We were when we were talking about diversity and inclusion, and how we all have to go up and get a bird's eye view of the world and history and look at it and see that people keep doing the same thing. Love continues to be a part of the world. Um, there really is goodness in the world. We're in better shape than we've ever been before in terms of children who get the shots they need. I mean, there's all kinds of bad things out there, but we're making progress on hunger, on education, etc. And we're not making progress because we're getting money out of it. We're making progress because there are people out there who are putting themselves forward with loving kindness,
mhm.
right? And they see, I mean, they may choose one group to put their money behind because they can't do everybody. They may have one cause like I have had, I mean, it's not that I excluded anybody, but I had my focus.
Your
But,
focus.
right. But then we have to bring it down to the daily and manage, without the bird's eye view. We have to manage our daily lives. And that's challenging because we're working hard to be spiritually strong and
Mhm.
centered and clear-eyed and be good representatives, ambassadors, right, of the divine. But boy, is it hard sometimes.
It's and I think that's for me is when meditation becomes so important. It's not that I have to sit for 20 minutes and figure it out. It's just the meditation of, am I being present with where I am right now and what I'm doing right now and who I'm with right now? Are they getting the best of me? And I
Yes.
think that's where we have to start.
When this morning when we were doing our prayer morning reading, and I noticed that in the beginning of the prayer of St. Francis, it's Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. It's not I'm going to be, where there is sadness, joy, bring joy. You have to help me, right? You have to help me do this. Lord, make me an instrument. So when I say that, I'm not talking about the guy with the big white beard in the sky, but I am talking about relying on the other entities in the world who are God, right? You're the divine. Ram Dass is divine. Donald Trump is divine, right? Whether we see it or not, that I need help from everybody in doing what I want to do, which is to feed the hungry and, and take care of those who are in pain, et cetera, et cetera. And I say in my book, this is not me. It's the Holy Spirit working through me. I'm just the vehicle, for this stuff to happen. I'm the clean window that the light shines through. Am I making, I mean, it's just.
You're absolutely making sense. And what comes to me is that, when we ask ourselves, am I seeing the divine in everything and in every person? Because ultimately that's what we hope to do if we're wanting to be sort of the spiritual intact being. We have to see the divine in everything. And I think when we ask, for me, seeing or trying to see the divine is the same as, am I being in unconditional love right now? Can I give love without condition? And I think what you're saying, what I hear from you when you're talking is that even though your focus was on your path, you did it with unconditional love. It was focused, but it wasn't, it's only for these people, and these are the only people that I believe deserve my
Right.
love. This
Right.
is just where I'm focused because I believe there needs to be equality here, just like there needs to be equality everywhere. But this is just, your soul's purpose was we need you to focus on this path because we've got other people on other paths.
Well, that's, that's one of the reasons I loved and I did this with audiences everywhere. Brian, did you sing the song I taught you? Because they all understand that though at that moment I was talking about, how difficult it can be to be gay. Are you there?
I'm here.
In a minute. It's just, I've got 5
Okay, we'll wrap. We'll let this be the last chat, the last words.
Yeah. You know what? The computer is telling me no. I want 20%, power. No, you don't have it.
But it is being nice and saying, wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, so the overall issue is, we all in life are called to be able to get a no and respond maturely and kindly
with unconditional love.
With unconditional love, and that we all need to see that we are sources for each other, right?
Absolutely.
Of unconditional love, that we're here to be with each other, not against each other.
And I think it's one of the sweetest privileges of life to be able to ask the question, am I being in unconditional love, and to choose unconditional love. Yes, the right action.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful. I say it over and over again for the opportunities the universe has given me, to be a source of love and healing. It's exhilarating.
It really is.
Like, oh my God, look what Brian McDonough did. It's, oh my God, I had so many wonderful privileges. It's a privilege to be a source, not the person who, it's exhilarating.
And I think I know we're wrapping up, but again, when we come back to the idea of unconditional love, if we're going to be cheerleaders for other people and be able to say to them, it's a privilege to be around you, it's a privilege to share time with you, we have to give that love back to ourselves and have moments of, look at what I did. Not because I want everybody else to see, because I need to acknowledge that that was my experience. That I had the privilege of all of these wonderful experiences to date. And there's far more yeses just today and tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, there are times, I would go on stage even when I was sick, and no one was going to know it. I wasn't going to let anyone know that I didn't feel well. So you go back to the hotel room and you're able to say, you did good.
You wow, I knocked that one up the park. Don't know how.
Yeah, but also, thank God for using me. It was your time, but I my body wasn't doing very great, and I got the strength to be up there. So it's good for you. Yeah, good for you, God.
And good for you. Well, let's end it there before you get shut down. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. I love you, my dear.
Lots of love. Have a wonderful, wonderful yes.
Yes, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.